morning. Please take your seat. Good morning, Ms Townsend. Before you give your evidence today, you must take an oath or an affirmation. Which do you choose to take?
Affirmation, please, Commissioner.
Thank you. Please stand. Please state your full name for the record.
Kelly Christine Townsend.
Thank you. Please read out aloud the affirmation.
I, Kelly Christine Townsend, sincerely declare and affirm that the evidence I give to this Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, Ms Townsend. Please take your seat and make yourself comfortable. Yes, Mr Shaw.
Commissioner, if you please, could I have Ms Townsend's statement on the screen, please? CRW 99800200518. And could we scroll through to the last page, please? One page before that, I beg your pardon. Ms Townsend, whilst your signature is redacted there, do you recognise that as your witness statement?
I do.
And your evidence is that that's true and correct?
Correct.
Commissioner, I tender that statement.
Thank you. The witness statement of Kelly Christine Townsend. Did you read out aloud the identifier?
Oh, I did. CRW 99800200518.
Thank you. With that identifier will be an exhibit in the Commission. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Shaw.
that is the version that was an _R because there is redactions.
Right, thank you. And it will be, I'm not quite sure, maybe it's not the _R document, which is the exhibit, it's the actual,
yes.
it's the unredacted version.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms Townsend, my name is David Lee. I'm one of the counsellors assisting the Commission. Just to begin with some questions in relation to your statement, you explain at paragraph 4 that you joined Crown in February of 2018. And that when you joined, you went immediately into the role that you now hold, being General Manager of Marketing Operations. At paragraph 64 of your statement, you then give a broad overview as to what your role requires you to do, and you explain that you review and approve all brand advertising and Tier 1 campaigns.
Correct.
That you review and approve Tier 2 campaign, creative and communications.
Yes.
And that you are generally consulted in relation to the creative and communications of Tier 3 campaigns.
Yes.
So speaking broadly or generally, you play a role in the approval of almost all of the advertising for Crown Perth.
Yes.
And then just some questions now about the size of your advertising team. You explain at paragraph 8 of your witness statement that you lead the Perth marketing operations team, which comprises around 30 people.
Correct.
Now, was that the size of the team when you joined in 2018, or has it grown over the years? And are all those people based in Perth? And they all full-time?
Yes, they would be. There's a few part-time, permanent part-times.
And in terms of then the day-to-day operations, how many of that 30 are on duty on any given day?
We are what we call, I guess, service support staff, so we're 5 day a week, full-time.
And then you explain in paragraph 10 of your statement that there are also a number of other marketing teams based in Perth. How many other people are in those marketing teams?
It does vary. If you look at the teams, we have, I guess, what we call specialist teams. Made up in Perth would be probably another 30 people, thereabouts.
I've just been passed a note from the transcribers asking if you can please make sure you talk loudly because they're having some difficulty hearing you. Thank you. Sorry, can you just repeat that answer?
That would be about another 30 people that make up the other specialist units that support the marketing operations team for Perth.
So in total, we're talking of approximately 60 people that make up the marketing area. Is that correct?
My correction, about 50-51.
50-51 in total.
Yes.
And of that 50-51, a portion of those people are working on advertising not just for Crown Perth, but for the whole Crown Group. Is that correct? Or are they all Crown Perth focused?
No, some of them have support roles to Crown Melbourne as well in the other teams. But yes, but they obviously support Perth as well.
And in terms then of those people who support Crown Melbourne, or at least partly support Crown Melbourne, how much of their work is in relation to Crown Perth?
When we require them to support the development and execution of our marketing campaigns for Perth, they would work on Perth. I couldn't give you an idea of how they would split their time.
Okay, so when they're working on Perth materials, all 50 people might be working on Perth marketing.
Yes, or give or take, but I guess I don't manage those teams, so I don't know how they allocate those teams' time.
Yes. Just in terms of a question for the types of work that you assist with for advertising and promotions, do you ever provide assistance to the RSG team in relation to its advertising materials? And I'm thinking particularly about the brochures that are provided for self-exclusion and so on at the casino.
We do support the RSG teams to produce those brochures.
And in terms of the design, the look and feel of those brochures, we've seen some of them when we did a tour of the casino recently. They have quite a uniform blue cover. There's no graphics or pictures or anything else which might perhaps make the brochure a bit more lively. Is that a deliberate choice by marketing?
No, I think that was a template that was established before my time. We actually haven't looked at taking it a bit further.
So that's not been something which has been raised or considered by RSG or marketing to perhaps have a refresh or a revamp of those brochures?
We changed the colour of the brochure cover a few years back, but we haven't looked at it.
Okay. I'll ask some questions now about your training and experience, and you deal with that at paragraph 19 of your statement, where you say that you didn't have any casino experience before joining in 2018, and then you joined and you completed the 2-day employee and induction program.
That is correct.
And was this at a training area known as the Crown College?
Correct.
And you say at 26 that in the course of your employment completed a range of other courses, and you set out those courses at paragraph 26, and they range from AML to RSG and other things. My question is, did you do all those courses immediately upon starting at the casino?
You have, I guess, a pack, want for a better word, of courses online to get through. So I guess you have an opportunity to complete them during your time. And then for some of them, there are annual refreshers, and some of them might be every second year.
So I'm going to ask you perhaps now to zoom in on a particular area, which is the RSG area. Is that true for RSG training, what you've just told us, that you first have the online training and then subsequently refresher course?
Correct.
And with the online training for RSG, firstly, was it referred to as a responsible service of gaming course or a responsible gaming course, if you can remember?
I can't remember, actually.
And in terms of it being this online training program, is that something which you then have to do at your own computer, at your own desk, in your own time?
Yes.
How long, approximately, does that training program take?
I think around half an hour to maybe an hour, depending on the person.
Mm-hmm. And of what is the course comprised?
It takes you through around our responsible gaming and our obligations as a business, but as an individual, to provide the services for detecting or observable signs of gaming harm, and also covers a few of our programs that our responsible gaming team delivers.
Now, you're aware from discussions with other staff at the casino whether the training that you had with that online program is standard training that all employees do?
It is my understanding it's standard and mandatory for all staff.
Now, you mentioned an annual refresher course. Is that a different course each year, or is it a repeat of the original course that you did?
I couldn't tell you.
So if you have it as an annual refresher course, you've done it 4 times, or perhaps approximately 4 times since starting in 2018, is that right?
I don't know if it's 4 times, but yes, I guess you're counting that. Yeah, 4 times.
Thinking about it now, can you remember whether the content was the same on each of those occasions, or whether it changed?
I would say it'd be the same. I'm not sure if it's changed.
Is it not particularly memorable content?
No, I wouldn't say it's not memorable, but there's a lot of courses and my memory fails me.
You then say at paragraph 22 that you've also recently attended an RSG manager course. And when was that attended?
About 2 months ago, I believe. recently, August, I think.
August. Is that the first time that you've attended that course?
Correct.
And what did that course entail?
That was face-to-face. It was with a group of our fellow colleagues. The trainer, who was an RSG advisor as well, went through an overview of responsible gaming overall, and then went through how to, depict observable signs, and went through but all of the programs that we deliver at Crown.
How long did that course take? We know you estimated a half hour before.
That was an hour.
That was an hour?
Yes.
And at the end of that course, was there any assessment or test that you had to pass, or was it merely an informational session?
No, there was a sheet at the end there where they asked you, your knowledge from what the course had provided, and that was to be given in.
And are you aware whether you have passed that course?
I'm not aware.
So you haven't yet received feedback
No.
as to that outcome? You mentioned a moment ago the observable signs of potential problem gambling. I understand that I'm putting you a little bit on the spot, but sitting here now, can you recall what those signs are, or some of those signs?
I'll try. Well, firstly, a person could self-disclose themselves to an RG advisor. You also may see some patrons who may stay longer after their friends or family have left in a bit more of a secretive way. You may see a patron, go to the ATM more often. You might see patrons be agitated and aggressive in their behaviour to some of our Crown staff or to other patrons. You may see the patron themselves looking a little bit in their appearance, deteriorating in their appearance. You may also see them, visit more often, or stay longer, or spend more money, or ask for more money.
So that's a very impressive recollection. Have you taken the opportunity to review the observable signs before giving evidence today?
Yes.
And when was that?
Probably last week.
Okay. In terms of your day-to-day in your ordinary job, how many occasions would you, if ever, be required to assess those observable signs, or come into a situation where you might be in a position to see those observable signs?
It's very rare because my role is not customer facing.
And as a result of that, would it be fair to say that you don't, on a daily basis, have to consider RSG perspectives at the casino?
I wouldn't say that. I consider, and my team considers, RSG perspective in all the advertising we do and the promotions we create.
And so when you say you consider it in all the advertising, you bring the RSG perspective, what does that mean in practical terms? What are you looking for? What are you doing in relation to that advertising?
If we talk about advertising specifically in terms of, the communications that go out, if it's a mass campaign, so TV, radio, the like, we ensure that obviously we have our standards and our regulations under the Wagering and Gaming Commission Act that we are obliged to follow. So we ensure that the 1-800 number, Gambling Help Online, is on those pieces of advertising. We ensure that the website is there, and also the RG or RSG logo. So those are the aspects in advertising.
You said the website is there. What did you mean by the website?
The Gambling Help Online website address.
And the 1-800 number? What did you mean by that?
That's the Gambling Help Online.
Okay, so those are both sources of information or assistance that people can contact.
Correct, yes.
And that they are put onto the advertising that Crown puts out.
Correct.
I'm going to turn now and ask you some questions about the Responsible Gaming Management Committee. And you mentioned at paragraph 19 of your statement, I think we've already discussed this, that you didn't have experience with casino operations before joining. You did the RSG training program, which you've told us about, the half-hour online course. Was there any additional training that you did or assistance that you were provided with before then joining or being tasked with being part of the Responsible Gaming Management Committee sometime in 2019?
Not to my recollection.
And you've explained, I think this is again at 23 of your statement, that you were asked to take a role in considering revocations for people who had previously self-excluded from the casino. Is that correct?
yes, that play a role in reviewing those reports.
In
yes.
reviewing? Who appointed you to that role?
The General Manager of Responsible Gaming in Perth,
And who is that?
Melanie Strellan.
Okay. And in terms of that appointment, what were you told, or how was it explained to you? What instructions did you receive at the time as to what your role would be?
Yeah, my understanding was that there's a revocation process from customers that are requesting to come back from self-exclusion or exclusion, that there's a report, well, there's a series of steps that patron is required to undertake with external psychologists and as well as our RSG advisors. The RSG advisor takes those recommendations, creates the report. That report then comes to myself. My understanding there's other individuals across the business that look at that report. I guess the brief to me and the instructions were to look at that report and I guess look at it from an observation perspective, making sure it's objective, it reads clear, not from, I guess, and from a layperson's perspective. So not about, I guess, a specialist in responsible gaming.
Okay. So I'm just going to ask now for a document to be called up, but this is to be only on council screens, not on the public view. It's CRW.700.055.8152. And Ms Townsend, as this is coming up, in answer to my questions that I'm asking next, please make sure that we don't use the name of the patron in this document. So you can see there, if it's on your screen, that it's an example of a revocation interview report.
Yes, excuse me.
That's all right.
Yes, thank you.
And you can see in the top on that table there's a reference to the interview date in August 2018.
Yes, yes,
And that's about 6 months after you started working at the casino.
that's correct.
Now, the report itself is 2 pages long. It sets out some of the history of the patron and what the patrons explained in their interview, the revocation interview. And if you can then go to the second page and look at the bottom, under the paragraph heading recommendations, and you can see that there's the third line there from the RSG, or the Responsible Gambling Advisor, starting in the third line, or just at the end of the second. I recommend approving the patron's application to revoke.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that, there's a paragraph which has been put in from you, and you say in the third line again, I recommend, all caps, approving the patron's application to revoke. And then you say at the start of that paragraph, that's based on information that's being provided by the patron, coupled with the counsellor's feedback.
Correct.
So my question is, in relation to the role that you're playing in this process, this revocation process, it's a more substantive role than merely making sure that the report reads clearly or is intelligible. You're actually making a substantive recommendation as to whether it's appropriate that a person be able to revoke their self-exclusion.
I understand your question, Mr. Lee, but I guess from my perspective, it was about looking at the objectiveness and the clarity of the report, and providing a recommendation.
So in your own head, you thought you were more approaching it saying, does this report make sense,
Correct.
rather than do I agree with it?
Correct.
I'm just going to ask you to take a look at another example of a report. Again, please, this is on the private screen only, and that's CRW.700.056.0929. And you can see in the top left-hand corner that this is one which relates to an interview date in February 2020. And if we please go to the final page. So once again, you can see there's some recommendations on the second to last page, and there's a discussion from the Responsible Gaming Advisor. And then over onto the final page, there's then the comments from you. And the language is, I concur with the observations and recommendations made by the RSG Advisor. So again, the way that you're expressing yourself is not to say, I understand the application, it makes sense, but you're saying that you have read and considered the observations and recommendations, and that you actually are endorsing those, and then again you can see in the second sentence, I recommend approving the application. So I'm going to suggest to you that the way the document is framed suggests that you are taking an active part in terms of making recommendations rather than merely assessing the intelligibility of the report.
Well, I disagree, but I guess I can only say how I've approached these reports, and from my perspective, whether it's the language of you're suggesting, I'm suggesting that I've looked at it more from a sense check perspective.
Thinking about it now and looking at the way that language reads, and I obviously understand your answer that that's not what you understood yourself to be doing. With the benefit of hindsight, do you think it's appropriate that Crown was asking you to take part in this sort of process to consider a revocation application?
I don't really have an opinion whether it's fair or not.
Do you have any experiences or qualifications in psychology or social work or anything of that nature?
No, I don't.
So in terms then of when you were making these assessments, sorry, let me rephrase that. You've explained that you didn't consider yourself in making assessments. When you said things to the effect of I concur with the observations and recommendations, what were you relying on to decide whether those recommendations or observations were sensible such that you could concur with them?
I was relying on the expert advice of the responsible gaming advisors. And obviously when you read through the document, the other psychologists who are specialists in this field. And I've obviously, to me, gone through a considerable amount of review with the patron.
So from your perspective, if the RG advisor had said that a recommendation was to allow the revocation, you would inevitably follow that?
Well, not necessarily, but on this occasion I have. I guess from my perspective, Mr. Lee, too, I'm sort of one chain in a larger process, so this report goes up to another level of committee for further review where there is more expert people, is my understanding.
Now, we've looked through the revocation reports similar to this that we have from the casino, and we may well not have all of them. But the ones that we've looked at, they all show that you approve the recommendation to allow revocation. Can you think of any occasions where you did not recommend approving a revocation?
Yes, I can recall at least one or maybe two over the time.
Okay. I'm going to move now to a different issue that can be taken off the screen, please. And I'm going to take you to paragraphs 27 to 30 of your witness statement, where you talk about the reports that you receive on a regular basis in terms of doing your job, some daily, others weekly and monthly. You say that some of these reports come from the customer database CDW. Am I right in understanding that CDW stands for Crown Data Warehouse?
I don't know if it's Crown or it just could be customer, one of the two.
And then the DW is Data
Data
Warehouse?
Warehouse, yes.
And is that the database in which Crown stores all of the information that they collate in respect of its business and in particular in respect of its Crown Rewards members?
I couldn't tell you, there's so many databases, but I would say it's one of the databases that collects multiple sources of information.
And are you aware that Crown does collect and analyse significant volumes of information in relation to, in particular, its Crown Reward members?
Yes.
The reports that you receive, that you've talked about in your witness statement, they're generally focused on the turnover and the revenue of the casino, aren't they?
The weekly ones, yes.
And is that so that you're in a position to be able to get immediate feedback as to the effectiveness of the campaigns that the business might be running?
For me, it's more around what's, happening from a visitation perspective. So from a marketing perspective, visitation is probably one of our primary views, and visitation obviously sort of impacts revenue.
And in terms of that point you made there about visitation being a really key aspect, at its core, the function of the marketing team is to try and ensure that people come to the casino more often.
Yeah, well, yes, we want to ensure that we create great reasons for many customers to come, whether they've not come at all in the past or they would come again.
and so come to the casino or come more often, and that once they're there, to spend money at the casino or the resort complex.
Entire complex.
And particularly in terms of the nature of the reports that we're looking at, particularly in respect of gaming.
Well, if you look at the reports I get, Mr. Lee, I don't just get the gaming reports. I also receive customer reports. I also receive the food and beverage report and the hotel report. So I guess in my role, because my role is in, I guess the view is across the entire destination, gaming is just one part of what I look at.
Absolutely. And looking at 29, the first reports that you mentioned, the first ones that are in that list, Table Games Revenue Report, EGM Patron Monitor Report. The next one, Table Games Patron Monitor Report. So the three that you first cite are all to do with people gaming. And I accept, obviously, that there are other functions to the casino. There's the hotel, as you say, and food and beverage. But is it right to say that a core, or perhaps the core aspect of the business functions are in relation to gaming?
I would say some. I wouldn't say it's the core, not from my perspective in my role.
So the list of reports that you have at 29, they seem to come from a number of different systems, and you explain the names of some of those, such as Opera for the hotels, and there are various others listed as well. Does that reflect the fact that Crown operates a wide range of systems to collect data and analyse data?
Yes, we have a lot of systems.
And would you agree that, as a general proposition, Crown Perth has a sophisticated and powerful data gathering and analysis capacity?
We have, I would say, we have capacity. Whether there's a level of sophistication, we're still working on that.
Improving all the time.
Yes.
Can I now please call up another document, CRW.700.048.6877, and I'm just going to ask you whether this is an example of one of the reports that you referred to in your statement, which is the EGM shift report.
Yes, that comes through on email daily.
Yep. And so looking at what the report actually shows you, you can see here in the first page, there's...
Could we just not put that on the public
Sorry,
screen?
could this be taken back off the public screens? Sorry, operator, could that be removed, please, from the public screen? Oh, thank you. So looking now at the screen in the centre, you can see there is information there as to the turnover at different times of day. TPM, is that turnover per minute?
I'm not quite sure, actually.
There's references to revenue, hold, the FAT-G turnover. So you can see that all of those bits of information there are concerned with the amount of money that the casino is making in that shift. If we go to the second page, please. You can see that there's some more detail here in relation to the day shift report. And then there are different sections where there's a breakdown as to what's happened. So you can see MGF, which I take it to be main gaming floor. And you can see that there's a description of what happened, and it finishes at the bottom there with what the turnover was and all the different parts of the area.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
And then the same sort of approach with the Pearl Room and the suite, what's happening and the amount of money turned over. And if we go to page 3, please. And you can see the same thing repeats again in relation to the other parts of the floor in the day shift. That goes through again, repeats main gaming floor, Pearl Room, the suite, etc. So would you agree that all of those parts of the report, the focus there is in terms of what is the revenue or the turnover in the different sections of the business?
I'd agree some of it is. The others is around the service aspect and the customer experience.
Would you agree that there's no aspect of that report which deals with RSG considerations?
Yes, on look of it, yes.
And you obviously would see these reports a lot, so you'd be familiar with the format. Is this a template format that the reports arrive in?
That's my understanding.
So in terms of the template then, there's no space in that template which provides for or requests information about RSG.
As it currently stands.
And thinking about the other reports that you've mentioned, and obviously there's quite a few of them in your statement, can you think of any reports which have a standard template section which requires or directs attention to RSG considerations for what's happening on a daily basis?
No, I don't recall.
I'm going to ask you some questions now about Crown branding. Paragraph 8b of your statement, you say that your role involves raising awareness and engagement of the Crown Perth brand and in the experiences, products and services on offer. That's in relation to all of Crown's business.
Correct.
Okay. At paragraph 12b, you then say that one of the KPIs by which your role is assessed is brand and campaign development and performance, which includes brand sentiment. The words brand sentiment, is that just the way the public perceives the brand?
Yes, about the positivity towards Crown as a brand.
Then at paragraph 31, you talk about receiving a brand tracking report on a bi-monthly basis. Again, is that so that you can track the effectiveness of the campaigns that are being run and how they're impacting on brand awareness?
Yes, so the purpose of the brand tracker, looking at the overall brand health of Crown Perth. And then there is parts of that looks at the campaigns themselves for their likability and how they're performing in the sense of other customers resonating with the attributes of what our brand stands for.
And then you bring all these general strands together at paragraph 58 of your statement, where you say that the marketing department's role is to raise awareness of the Crown brand as a destination of choice. Would you accept that's a good summary of your function?
Well, one of them, yes.
Now, you are aware that the casino changed its name from Burswood to Crown Perth in 2012? Or are you aware of that fact?
I wasn't here at the time, but yes, I understand it happened.
And would you agree that ever since then, or certainly ever since you've been at the casino, Crown Perth has made marketing efforts to promote that Crown brand?
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that Crown spends a considerable amount of time and money each year to build and maintain Crown's brand?
Yes.
Do you consider that those efforts are generally successful in terms of promoting and building Crown's brand and developing brand recognition?
I think we do a reasonably good job.
And in terms of brand recognition, does that include Crown's distinctive logo, the crown with the dots coming out the top?
It includes, yes, recognition of the logo, but it's more recognition as a destination that when a customer thinks about going out and spending their leisure time or their entertainment time, who comes to mind? So we measure that whether it's prompted awareness or unprompted awareness. So that's sort of...
But in terms of that logo, would it be the intention of the marketing team to make sure that if a person saw that logo, that Crown logo, that it would be synonymous with, as you say, going out, having a good time?
Yes.
And also synonymous with premier casino gaming throughout Australia?
For some customers that might resonate with them, but the majority of our customers and who we communicate to, Mr. Lee, across particularly advertising and mass channels is not primarily towards casino or people that prefer to use the casino for entertainment.
Do you consider that it would be the case that the average consumer, and you may not be able to answer this other than by reference to the reports you have, that the consumer understands that the Crown logo is synonymous with the casino in Western Australia?
Some would. I think some also view more so Crown as a tourism and hospitality destination, and yes, there's the casino.
I'm going to ask you some questions in a moment about direct marketing to Crown customers, but before I turn to those materials themselves, I want to ask you about the Crown Rewards program. Am I right in understanding that the direct marketing that Crown sends out, and particularly the direct mails, are primarily sent to Crown Rewards members?
Yes, from a direct marketing perspective, there are, I guess, privacy regulations and law that requires us to have permission to talk to customers who have opted in to receive direct communications.
And we'll talk about this some more in a moment, but the type of marketing that the customers receive may depend on their status or tier in the membership program. Is that correct?
That's one of the aspects, yes.
Now, in terms of the Crown Rewards program, it's a system based on the accumulation of points by customers for making use of the services at the Crown resorts, whether that be hotel, food and beverage, or casino gaming. Is that correct?
Yes, and our Crown gifts as well.
And Crown gifts.
Yes.
And points not only can be used or obtained from those services, including gaming, they can also then be exchanged for services, including for gaming services.
That's my understanding, yes, that happens.
Would you agree, as a result of that, that persons who are the heaviest gamblers, who are turning over a significant amount of money, are the ones who stand to gain the most by being members of a Crown Rewards program?
Yes.
And therefore, perhaps the ones most likely to become members, in a general sense?
Yes.
Would you also accept, again as a general proposition, that the people who are the heaviest gamers and turning over the most amount of money are also the ones who are most likely to be at risk of becoming problem gamblers or suffering gambling-related harms?
I'm not quite sure if that's the case. I've not seen evidence to suggest that.
So you wouldn't accept that as a general proposition, the people who spend the most on gaming are the ones who are most at risk from gaming?
That would be probably one aspect in terms of developing harmful gaming behaviours and problem gambling.
So you accept it's one aspect?
Yes.
And you made a comment there before that you haven't necessarily seen much research on that point. Have you sought out any research or asked that question of the RSG people at the casino?
Not directly the RSG people. I've read a few papers.
And what's your
Of recent
understanding
time.
from reading those papers?
That it's I guess spend is one aspect, and I think you said length is another aspect. But there's also other aspects around, I guess, behavioural aspects that go towards customers developing harmful gambling and problem gambling behaviours.
So do I understand correctly that the papers you were referring to are ones that have looked at the various behaviours of persons which might either predict or be signs of problem gambling? Do I have that right?
Yes.
And then you gave two examples of amount of spend and length of play. But would you also agree that if a person has a very significant turnover or significant spend, then it almost inexorably follows that they must have a significant play period as well, because they've obviously been there a long time to gamble that much money?
Or they've come multiple times.
Would you accept as a general proposition that the people who are Crown Rewards members, if they are people who are gambling more than the average person or perhaps more than the average Crown customer, are persons who are most at risk of gambling-related harm out of Crown's customer base?
Possibly.
And would you agree that accordingly it is appropriate for Crown to be sensitive to the risk that its promotions or advertisements that it's sending to Crown Rewards members might adversely affect people if they already have a degree of gambling-related harm or they're problem gamblers?
To those direct people, but not to everyone.
So it's appropriate to be sensitive to people who have a problem, but not to all customers. Do I have that right?
No, I think I misunderstood your question, Mr. Lee. Can you repeat that?
So my question is, in terms of thinking about the Crown Rewards members, and I've been putting propositions to you suggesting that those are the people who are most likely to gamble and therefore most likely to be at risk of problem gambling. My question then is, if that's right, would you agree that Crown has an obligation to be sensitive to the risk that its advertisements to Crown Rewards members may itself cause or contribute to gambling-related harms?
Oh, in that regard, yes, yes.
Okay. And again, the reason I'm asking that question is because I'm putting it to you as a proposition that receiving advertisements about gambling or encouraging people to gamble may induce some people to gamble more than they can otherwise afford to do.
I think I understand your question, but I think the way, from the Crown's perspective, it's how we put our campaigns together to ensure that we have a level of responsibility towards how we promote our services.
You talk at paragraph 44 of your witness statement about the fact that Crown has an obligation to not send marketing promotional material to customers who have been self-excluded or otherwise barred from the casino. And you've explained that such customers are taken off the marketing lists. Is that decision, that step to not advertise those people, a recognition of the fact that gambling advertisements being sent to such persons might in fact create or trigger a desire to gamble again when those people are currently self-excluding?
Yes, I could see that point of view.
And is that therefore a recognition ultimately that there is a need to be sensitive with gambling advertisements because they could result in a degree of gambling-related harm?
Yes, I can see that point of view.
Is that your point of view?
Oh, yes.
Now, we've also seen some references in the papers that the Commission has been provided with that suggest that a process to wash mail lists before marketing emails are sent out to the client base might have been put in place in August of 2018. And just for the transcript, not to be put on the screen, please, CRW.704.001.3724 at page 7. What I've just said there was a reference to a responsible gaming management committee meeting where there was a discussion about washing of emails. My question to you is, was that already in place when you arrived at the casino in February 2018, or did that get introduced after you arrived?
I couldn't actually recall or tell you, Mr. Lee. I would, from my recollection, I would have thought that all of our lists had already had that process in place where we would be excluding customers or patrons that have been excluded.
So in terms then of these customers or patrons who've been self-excluded, where you say that there's a prohibition on advertising to them, is that prohibition in respect of all advertisements or only in respect of advertisements which feature gambling?
That's through the direct mailing lists.
Mm-hmm.
So they would be taken off the direct mailing list altogether and not receive anything.
So, for example, they wouldn't receive advertisements which only advertise the bars or the hotels or a theatre show?
No, they'll come off the entire list.
And is that again in recognition of the fact that if they receive promotional material from Crown with its distinctive logo and the obvious associations with casinos, that in itself might be enough to trigger a desire to gamble?
I don't think it was viewed in that regard. I think we just reviewed it as an all-across-board decision.
Is it your view that Crown is aware of and sensitive of the need to ensure that the advertisements that it sends out do not in any way add to or exacerbate problem gambling or the harms that might be caused by gambling?
So could you repeat that question?
Is it your view that Crown is sensitive to the need to ensure that any marketing that it sends out does not in any way cause or add to gambling-related harm?
Yes.
I'm now going to ask some questions about an email spreadsheet which the PCRC received, which seemed to talk to the nature and the volume of direct mail advertising from Crown Perth. Can we call up CRW.700.044.0475? This is a spreadsheet that we have which seems to show ads in May and June of 2021 once it comes up.
Excel always takes longer, I think. I think Excel always takes longer.
All right, so now that we've got that up, just starting with the type column, you can see that we've got some different descriptions: COVID, WOE, member NG, loyalty, and theatre solace. Just going through each of those in turns, can you explain to the Commissioner what those mean?
Yeah, so if you look in the date column, so every line is a day that a particular piece of communication will go out. So the type would be explaining what it's about. So if we look at the first one, this is around COVID. So it was about the, I guess, the service message to all of our customers around the casino remaining closed through that lockdown period. So you would see what the campaign and promotion was called, you'd see the content actual headline, so that appears in the headline of the email, and then if there are any related promo dates aligned to that. So obviously there is no promo dates for that particular example. So if you go to the next one, this is around our world of entertainment, which is for a member, and it's non-gaming, and that's what NG stands for. And then if you look at the campaign promos, that's all the information, all the content, examples of all the things we're promoting to our customers in that particular email, and then the content aligns with the promo. And some of them will have specific promo dates. As you can see, it was Mother's Day back in May at Market & Co. And so it was a promo date specifically around that particular day. So that's sort of how we build our emails in terms of content.
And so you've got some loyalty examples there at row 14 and 16. What sort of things are loyalty referring to?
So that's around the Crown Rewards program.
And you can see under column D of row 17, there's a statement, your offer has been extended for the loyalty one. Do you know what that would mean?
No, I can't recall that particular example.
Mm-hmm. Then at row 18, we've got Theatre Solace. What is that about?
Oh, that's about our Crown Theatre, the only 2400s lyric style theatre that the state has. So we were able to continue with our theatre program through COVID, which we're very fortunate. So this was all about promoting, I think it was Priscilla, coming to theatre.
Okay, so that one is the solace in reference to the fact that there's nothing in that email other than theatre activities?
Correct.
And then we've got underneath that, row 25, WOE, which I think you said was World of Entertainment.
Yes, that's our weekly email to members. This one is for the member tier.
And
with gaming.
With gaming, and that's
Yes.
what the G stands for.
Correct.
So in terms of these emails that are going out, if they're going to something, for example, like the Theatre Solace, do they go to all of the Crown Rewards members?
They will go to our active Crown Rewards member list. So we have, obviously, Crown Rewards members sign up.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our members, and we only look at members that have visited in the past 12 months, so we call that our active 12-month list. And then from that active 12 months, particularly for email, we only communicate to those members who've chosen email as their preferred channel.
So just that first part of those 2 points you made there, that they have to be there within 12 months to be active. How do you measure if they've been there? Does it if they use their card in the 12 months, or if they've seen at the casino?
No, that's through rated. What we see through them rating using their card.
So if they've bought something and they've presented their card, and is that typically in the casino, or could it be anywhere in the complex? So in what circumstances would you present a card if you were, say, go into a restaurant?
You go to Nobu, and you might be a silver member with some points, and you have a reservation. When you finish your reservation and pay the bill, you go, well, can I please use my rewards card, and can my points be allocated for the amount of money I've spent on my bill?
So you mentioned there a moment ago signing up, and that's something that you touch on at paragraph 61 of your witness statement as well. When you're talking about a person signing up and opting in to receive advertising, what does that mean in a practical sense? So does a person, for example, if they're filling out a form to join the Crown Rewards program, do they actually have to tick a box somewhere on the form that says, I want to get advertising?
Yes, the Crown Rewards team do the sign up and process. So,
but if you don't know that, that's not a problem.
So.
But my understanding is there is a checkpoint that there's privacy often provided by the customer.
And again, you might not know this if it's not your area, but if you're having a person sign up online, which I understand you can do for Crown Rewards, is that correct?
Yes, you can go that process, but also we have customers that just sign up to receive communications from us who are not necessarily members. What we call those members are what we call non-members. And then from that perspective, particularly with email, we have a non-members, email list, and they only receive non-gaming information.
So when would they sign up to be a non-member who is getting advertising? What sort of circumstances do they sign up?
Oh, people come through the website. They obviously have visited Crown before, and they want to know more about what's going on a weekly basis. So they choose to receive that information.
So they'll actually find a section of someone which says, I'd like to receive more information, and sign that up.
Yes.
And in terms then of the online sign up for Crown Rewards members, Again, you might not know this because it's perhaps not your area, but are the forms that are filled out forms where there's a default check saying I'd like to get advertising that you then have to uncheck if you would not like to get it, or is it the case you actively have to choose advertising?
I am not quite sure, Mr. Lee.
Not a problem. So I'm not going to take you through this whole spreadsheet, but obviously we can see that there are many different advertisements in that first page that we're looking at down to the 13th of May. Are you able to tell the Commission in general terms how many pieces of direct mail advertising go out to Crown Rewards members or non-members generally in the course of a month?
Oh, course of a month. Okay. I would probably tackle it this way because from a yearly perspective, there's a lot of communications that go out, as you can appreciate. Our members probably on average will receive one communication a week. That's the majority. There are some of our members in our higher tiers because they're obviously, I should say obviously, they're open to receive more benefits from our loyalty program or offers. They may receive up to 3 communications a week on average.
And so when you said our members, are you saying people who are in the member tier of the Crown Rewards program, which is the starter tier?
Yes.
And so you're not including in that tier people who might be in the silver or gold or platinum tiers?
Oh, that could be, yeah, I would say on average, that member, silver, gold, it would be a classification across all.
As an average. Okay, so you then said that some of the persons might receive more like 2 or 3 emails a week. Which categories of person would that be?
Possibly the gold, platinum and black tiers.
And people who are in the gold, platinum and black tiers, those are the people who are gambling the most at the casino.
Based on, I guess, their level of turnover and I guess what we see in their visitation.
And you're nodding, so that's a yes?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. Having looked at that now, I'm just going to ask you some questions about some of the World of Entertainment emails in particular that were sent in May. And again, by my count on that spreadsheet, there were 4. Is that the general case? There's usually 1 World of Entertainment email a week? And is that the email that you're thinking of when you said that ordinarily members are getting 1 communication a week? If we can please have up crw.700.066.0855. And you can see there that we've got a 10 May date, but if we go to the second page, it appears that this is in respect of EDMs, that's electronic direct mail,
That's correct.
on the 3rd of May.
Correct.
So that first date that we saw, the 10th of May, do you do analysis of the marketing approximately a week later?
Usually the analysis will come in the following sort of Monday.
And this document that we're looking at now, is this a document that's put together by your marketing area? And are you involved in the preparation of this document or documents like it? Who does these?
This would sit in our marketing communications team.
And then is it the sort of document that's then internally disseminated for everyone's information as to how the campaigns are going?
Yes.
So looking at the top left-hand side, we've got rows member, silver plus, provisional and non-member. Can you just confirm what they refer to?
So non-member, as I mentioned before, patrons who have not signed up to Crown Rewards.
Mm-hmm.
A provisional member they've started the process with Crown Rewards in terms of sign up, but they haven't completed it. What's missing is their ID check to confirm full membership. Silver and above is all silver tiers and above, and member is just that member entry member tier.
Entry level.
Yep.
And then you've got volume as the first column next to that. What does that represent?
That's a unique number of individuals that will receive that email in that tier.
So each person in the tier who was sent the email that's being analysed.
Correct.
Then going across, we've got percentage of unique opens. Is that the number of people who actually opened the email that they received?
Correct.
And how is Crown able to tell how many people have opened the email?
Well, through it and the email systems which we use, the Salesforce Marketing Cloud, it detects when it goes into someone's inbox and they actually open it up. That all happens behind the scenes.
And you might not be aware of the technical aspect, but is that because each email has a unique identifier such that when the email is opened, the cloud or the server can see from which identifier the request is coming?
I would assume there's something in that, whether it's unique or it's just an identifier that it's been open, I'm unclear.
Okay. And then the next column after that is percent of unique clicks and actual unique clicks, that you can see that further along on the table. What are those referring to, clicks?
That's where people go through and click on certain items within the content.
So that's a specific advert inside the email.
Correct.
That there's then an additional click rather than just opening the email itself.
Correct.
And then down the bottom corner, we've got some benchmarks in a table, and there's the acronyms OR and CTR. If you could just explain to the Commissioner what that means.
Yes, that's the actual open rate, so how many people open the email versus how many people would click through on something within the email.
So OR and CTR, open rate and click-through rate.
Correct.
And if we then go through again, please, to page 3. Can you just explain to the Commissioner what we're looking at here?
Yeah, so this is, I guess, a heat map, for want of a better word, to understand how each of our messages are performing in regards to click-through rate. So you can see that those items in the green is where customers have clicked through higher and interacted with that piece of content. The orange is as moderate level, and then red is where they probably haven't done much at all, or very limited.
And at the top of the page, we've got full pod results. What does that mean?
So the individual pods, which are all those content blocks, we call them pods. So that's just showing how it all works for the entire build of those individual email pieces.
And the first column that we have, there's a heading that says hero. What does that refer to?
That's the hero message at the top of the email.
And for us non-marketing
Sorry,
folks, what does a hero mean?
It's usually the main message that opens up that email at the top tile.
It's almost the introductory
Correct.
email. Thank you. Then if we go to the next page. So starting again that top left-hand corner, we've got all streams. What's that referring to?
So this would be all streams, meaning all of the email streams.
So member, provisional,
Yeah.
etc. And then we've got underneath that hero message. This is the main opening ad. in the
Yes, so
email.
that's the hero message. Welcome back.
And looking at that hero message, we've obviously got the Crown logo at the top.
Yes, sir.
That line underneath, Live a Little Again, is that the Live a Little campaign that Crown has been running?
Yes.
How long has that been running for?
Probably a couple of years now.
And is it a standard inclusion in most of Crown's advertising?
Yes, it's our brand tagline.
So would you expect that a customer receiving an email like this with that Crown logo and the Live a Little tagline would immediately understand that this was coming from Crown Perth?
I would think so, with association to our logo.
And then to the right, we've got pod 1, 2 and 3. And you've explained already that the pod is essentially each individual ad.
Yes.
And then obviously these, as you pointed out before, the Marketing Co. Flowing Brunch, I think you said there that the Mother's Day special was on, and we can now see the ad that correlates to that. And then over the page, we've got some additional pods. So we've got pods 4, 5 and 6 there. Is that usually the case that a World of Entertainment email will have 6 ads?
Yes.
And then lastly, we've got that final banner, the Safely Welcoming You.
Yes, that's I guess we call that the footer banner.
The footer banner, and is that just at the bottom of every email that Crown sends out as a World of Entertainment email?
Yeah, they're fairly templated, as you can see.
Okay. And you've got down in the bottom a responsible gaming and a responsible drinking logo.
That's correct.
However, you don't have any phone number or website address on those emails.
Yes, because they're in direct stream. They're not, I guess, mainstream published to the wider world.
So when you say direct stream, is that just...
Direct to customer who's opted in to receive.
Okay. And as a result of that, your understanding is that there's no requirement for the number or the website if it's a direct to customer stream. Is that right?
That's my understanding, that's
So when you said that is your understanding and it's in your checklist, where did that understanding come from? Was it from the checklist, or have you been informed of that by other people?
Well, everything we do goes through our legal and compliance team, and these templates have been in use since before my time. I would also think there's obviously the Regulation 43 that all of our work refers to.
So that's actually the next topic area I wanted to take you to was Regulation 43, and you refer to that in your witness statement in a number of paragraphs. You understand that Regulation 43 imposes limits on the sorts of advertising that Crown is permitted to do, or puts conditions on the advertising that Crown can do.
Correct, there's provisions, yes.
What do you understand to be the purpose of Regulation 43? Why does it exist?
I think it gives us parameters as a gaming operator of how we can promote our gaming products and services alongside our non-gaming products and services responsibly.
So that's what it does, it gives you the parameters, but why? What's your understanding as to why parameters are provided for the casino? What's the reason, as you understand it, as to why you are told certain requirements for your advertisements?
To ensure that we're responsibly promoting all of our services and experiences accordingly to legislation.
And those words, responsibly promoting, would you agree that that essentially boils down to making sure that the advertising that Crown's using doesn't run the risk or the possibility of causing or contributing to gaming-related harm?
That would be, yes, I would agree with that.
So if we can now call up, please, pub.0016.0022.001, and this is Regulation 43 as it exists today. And if we can please go to page 44. Have you previously had a chance to actually look at the regulation?
Oh, it's been a little while, but that's
So
all right.
you have seen it in the past, but you
Yes.
haven't refreshed your memory in some time.
No.
So here at 44, you can see we've got some definitions in the middle of the page there under 43.1.
Yes.
And you can see, first of all, the definition of publish, meaning to bring to the notice of the public or a section of the public.
Yes.
And it talks about the means that it can be advertising, including the internet or any other form of communication.
Yes.
And then you can see that gambling advertisement is defined essentially in two steps as an advertisement that conveys or is likely to convey the existence of a gambling operator.
Where are we? Sorry,
So that's
Mr.
roughly in the
Lee.
middle of the page under the heading certain advertisements and inducements prohibited.
Okay, sorry.
And then we're looking at gambling advertisement,
Yes.
and there's those two parts to it. The first part being in terms of conveying or likely to convey the existence of a gambling operator, and the second part giving publicity to or promoting or
Yes.
intended to promote participation in gambling.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you, for the sake of these questions coming up, to assume that Crown Perth is a gambling operator. There's a technical definition, but I don't want to take you through that. Looking at those definitions, or bearing those definitions in mind, I just want to take us now back to the World of Entertainment email for the 27th of May of this year, and that's at crw.700.066.0869. And if we can go to page 2, please. So we can see here that this appears to be the case, that there were different streams on this occasion for Member, Riverside, Pearl and Provisional. For Riverside and Pearl, is Pearl people who are members of the Pearl Room?
Yes.
And Riverside, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't have to apply to be a member of the Riverside. You're entitled to be a member once you have silver status or above on Crown Rewards. Is that correct? So if it says Riverside, it's really talking about people who have silver or high membership.
Correct.
And in terms then of the number of people who received emails in those categories, you can see it's 13,000 for Riverside, or 13,000 odd, and 1,500 for Pearl. It's roughly 15,000 people in total would have received those two categories. If If we then go, please, to page 4. We've got the hero message for the member stream, again with the Crown logo and the Live a Little campaign.
Yes.
Which I think you've previously agreed is well recognised or would be understood by people receiving this as being a campaign from the casino. Yes?
Yes, yes, sorry.
And then if we go down to page 6, please. So you can see at the top that we've got Riverside Stream.
Yes.
And this is a different hero message, although it's got the Crown logo and the Live a Little Again taglines. This double your status credits message, can you explain what that's about?
Yes, this is a rewards opportunity for our members to, when they visit, they can, and when they utilise their card, as they can earn 2 times the amount of status credits during that playtime.
So 2 times what they would ordinarily earn,
Correct.
if not the special.
Yes.
And then in terms of the language that's used at the bottom of the actual hero message, you can see in that first line, the smaller text on the right-hand side, you can earn status credits when using your Crown Rewards membership card to dine, play or stay. And the word play in that is a reference to gambling, isn't it?
Correct.
So thinking in terms of what this ad is offering for people to get a bonus for gambling, amongst other things, at a particular time, would you agree that that's a message which is designed to promote participation in gambling by offering a reward or inducement?
Yes, it's a promotion to bring customers to visit, and then they will participate should they choose to.
And the same thing applies when you look across to the next page for pods 1, 2 and 3. And perhaps if we could zoom in, please, on pod 1 and 2. And you can see there in the top for the 3 times gaming machine point multiplier, talks about earning those extra points while playing on eligible gaming machines in the Riverside room. So again, it's
Same premise, yes.
yes. So again, you would agree it's an inducement or a reward being offered for a person to engage in gambling.
Yes, because it's on gaming machines.
Yes. And would you agree as well that the same principle applies in relation to the ad below, which is the table game point multiplier?
Correct.
Then if we can please go across to the next page. And if we can zoom in a little bit on pod 4 at the top there, the exciting new game. Just looking at that text there, what the gaming machine offers, and then the exhortation at the bottom line, or sorry, second to bottom line, unlock the locket feature, exclamation mark, now available in the Riverside room. Would you agree that that, again, is an invitation to people to gamble, although this time not on the basis of an inducement?
No, this is about just letting customers know there's a new game available.
And is the purpose for which customers are being told there's a new game available to encourage them to come try the new game?
If it's of interest to them, yes.
Now, if you'd like, I can take you to show you the other streams for the Pearl stream as well, but without seeing them, would you be happy to agree that the same ads appear in the Pearl stream as well?
Yes.
So at least just looking at the face of what we've seen for these ads so far, would you agree that the whole of the World of Entertainment email to the Riverside and Pearl streams would satisfy those 2 criteria that we looked at a moment ago of gambling advertisement, in that it conveyed the existence of the gambling operator, Crown, and that it was a promotion for people to engage in gambling?
Well, yes, it's a direct piece of communication.
If we can now please go back to the regulations, and that's PUB.0016.0022.0001. If we can now please go to page 47. You can see that we've got regulation 43 sub 6 on this page there, which requires certain things of a gambling operator who is publishing a gambling advertisement. And then part A is if it's audio, visual or audio, which obviously this is not. But then part B, we've got in any other case, prominently displays the telephone number of the National Problem Gaming Helpline and details of the National Problem online counselling website. Now,
Yes.
I think you've already agreed that the world of entertainment doesn't have those features, the helpline and the counselling website.
Yes, and it's in that bottom banner.
Sorry,
Yes,
second.
in the banner area, yes.
You're saying that it does have them in there?
No, it doesn't.
It
Yes,
doesn't.
it's just got the logo.
Yes. What is your understanding as to why that is the case, given the apparent requirements in 43 sub 6?
I couldn't tell you why. My understanding is that all of our templates were set up and are set up with a review of our legal team. So that's where they are. I couldn't tell you.
Is it essentially the case that you arrived at Crown in 2018 and that's how things worked, and you haven't had cause to examine these regulations or consider the nature of the advertisements that are being sent?
No, I would consider all the our advertising that we've sent. I think I just can't explain why they're set up that way.
Sorry, when you say you would consider all your advertisements, you mean you'd consider the ads themselves but not the extent to which they complied with the regulations. Is that right?
We do.
Well, can I just interrupt for a moment? My friend's speaking in terms of compliance with the regulations. Obviously, that involves assessment of legal considerations. You can obviously ask this witness about matters relating to facts and observable matters, but he just needs to be careful about crossing the line in terms of inviting conclusions, legal conclusions. There is a question, and I'm yet to understand exactly the point that my friend seems to be making about the interaction between the different provisions in this section of the legislation and whether there in fact is a requirement regarding the display of telephone numbers. But if my friend can at least just keep his questions confined to questions of fact rather than legal conclusions.
Well, let me say this, that clearly he can't ask her for a legal opinion. I'm sure Mr. Lee's aware of that. In my view, he has not done so as yet, and certainly I'm happy to remind him not to do that. But I think he is entitled to explore this area with the witness to the extent that he's doing so.
Can I just say this, Commissioner, to the extent questions talk about compliance with the legislation, and clearly potentially does.
Yes, but
intrude
asking
into-
her whether she considers compliance is different from asking her whether they in fact comply. In her view, they do comply.
Well, that's potentially just inviting an opinion as to whether or not there's been a breach as a question of law.
I disagree, Mr. Garros. Perhaps we might leave it there and take morning tea now. So, Ms. Townsend, we will return at 11:30. Thank you. If you could be back here in time to recommence at that point. All rise. Please be seated. I apologise for the delay. Yes, Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms Townsend, just before the break, we were going through and looking at a few aspects of the advertisements in the world of entertainment and Regulation 43. And I had taken you and shown you Regulation 43.6, which required certain things to be displayed in advertisements that promoted gambling.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
So my question then, going back to those topic areas, first of all, in relation to the world of entertainment emails that go out, do you approve those emails before they go out?
Yes, I see them, yes.
And at the time that they go out, and particularly in relation to the one that we were looking at, the 27 May email, at the time that went out, were you aware of the existence of Regulation 43?
Yes.
And had you, or did you at that time give any active consideration as to whether you considered that the advertisement, the world of entertainment email,
Well, I think there's a question there, as Mr. Garros has said, as to whether it is an advertisement. So,
whether the marketing material that went out, did you give any consideration as to whether it complied with that regulation?
Yes.
And what was your understanding as to whether it did or did not?
My understanding is it did comply.
And what was your basis of that understanding?
Well, basis of everything that the marketing team does at Crown goes through our legal and compliance team. So those templates were designed and have been reviewed and approved by our legal team, and we take our direction from them.
Okay. Just in relation then to those emails again, we looked before the fact that there was about 15,000 people who would have received the Riverside and Pearl streams. In terms of the process for going about to apply to be a member of the Crown Rewards program, my understanding is that it's free to join the program.
That's my understanding, yes.
And is it also the case that any person who is over 18 is generally entitled to join the program?
Yes, you must.
But apart from that restriction that you must be 18, are there any other restrictions which limit the people who can become members?
I'm not aware.
Is it the case that all of the world of entertainment emails that go out will, like the one that we saw, have the logo for responsible gambling and responsible drinking, but not the phone number and the website address?
That's the current template we have.
Just for the sake of comparison, I'm going to show you the Crown Rewards brochure, and that's dlg.0007.004.001 at page 15. So you recognise that as the Crown Program brochure?
Yes.
And if we can then please go through to page 27. And zooming in at the bottom, please. And you can see we've got the helpline and the website address there. Will those bits of information, the helpline and the website address, will they be on all Crown advertising materials other than the direct mails?
They should be, in terms of published to the mass market. That's my understanding.
Okay, thank you. That can be taken down, please. So we've looked now at some of the marketing materials that you send out, and I wanted to ask you questions about RSG's views or interactions with those materials. You mentioned at paragraph 54 of your witness statement that RSG is involved or invited to the planning presentation meetings for the trimester marketing plan.
Yes, they are.
Do they also get to specifically see each of the emails that are sent out by direct mail marketing to Crown Rewards members?
Not the emails, in terms of each of the emails. They'll see the individual promotions, if they're gaming related, if you understand, Mr. Lee.
So is that the pod example that we looked at before?
Yes, because the pod examples are primarily focused on the actual gaming promotion itself, not the entire, and they build into the pod, into the email, if that makes sense.
So we saw those pods, we had the two examples of the 3 times EGM and the 2 times table games points multipliers. Are you saying that those ads, those particular pods, were shown to RSG before being sent out and that they received RSG approval?
Would they be shown individually? They would be discussed through the marketing planning cycle. They would go through to our legal and compliance team, and our legal and compliance team would then review on and include RSG in that process. They don't get directly emailed per se and this is obviously going back probably last year, but going forward, we've made some changes to our process with RSG.
So just to make sure I fully understand this process, I may not have followed the way you were describing it. So there's a pod that's proposed to go out, that then goes to legal?
Our legal and compliance team.
Legal and compliance?
Yes.
And do they show RSG, or where does RSG have
Yeah, so
input?
that's in that process of review and approval. Our legal team in the past, and when I say in the past, we've improved the process to document RSG so they will see everything. We just had a approach before that. Everything goes through legal and legal will consult RSG.
Okay, so you are not in those conversations when they take place. That's a conversation between legal and RSG directly. Is that right?
Yes, but we also have other opportunities to talk to RSG prior to that as well.
And again, you might not be able to say if you're not part of those direct conversations, but do the RSG team have the capacity to veto an advertisement if they don't consider it to be appropriate?
Oh, we have an open working relationship like that. Yes, we'd have those conversations.
And to the best of your recollection, can you think of any occasion where RSG has vetoed a proposed advertisement?
I wouldn't say vetoed. We've seen some changes in terms of wording and suggested wording for more clarity. We've certainly seen some changes towards, moving towards prize draws that are virtual, so customers can virtually enter. We've seen some improvements and changes to sometimes our draws having customers not have to be present to win. So those are the types of conversations and changes that we would consider with the RSG team.
And is that because if customers don't have to be present, then there might not be the temptation for them to gamble by coming to the casino? Is that why that's an RSG issue?
I think it's one aspect, yes.
And can you think of any other types of input, such as you're describing, that RSG have provided?
That's probably those aspects. Every time we sort of discuss around a new promotion, and if there's an entry mechanic, for a better word, RSG will always ask, have we considered that, and this is how all of our promotions are designed, with the mind that we're not asking our customers to do anything more than they've done historically in the past. Mm-hmm. So that's usually the first conversation that happens.
And I think you referred to that in your witness statement as the stretch, so that it's not the case that customers are required or asked to spend above their prior historical spending. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you're saying that's an RSG initiative or
I don't know if it's just RSG. I think that's an all of Crown initiative in the way we approached and design our marketing and promotions and communications.
Has RSG ever, to the best of your recollection, given any feedback or input as to advertisements of the kind that we saw before, which are the promotion of points, the 2 times or 3 times multiplier?
Not to my recollection.
One of the things that you mentioned in your statement when you're talking about the different channels of advertising that the casino has available is the digital screens on the property. I think you said there's about 2,500 throughout the property on which you can display advertisements. Do any of those screens ever display RSG type advertisements?
Yes, they do.
Can you give us some more detail?
Yes, so we have in our rotation of messages an RSG campaign around who our RSG team is, what services they offer. Also, there is the gambling help online numbers, the helpline numbers. So there's a mix of messages to support our RSG team and our services.
And do those messages cycle through along with more general style advertisements?
Yes, they do.
In terms then of what you're putting up as messages to support RSG, one of the issues which Crown has recently been dealing with is play periods, length of play at the casino. Are there any signs or comments suggesting that patrons not play more than a certain amount of time?
We have done a campaign on play limits, and that's to our customers. We're working on a campaign for play periods now because there's going to be a change in the next coming month. So we're working on those types of messages to be present in our communications.
And when you say the change in the next few months, is that the change which Crown has proposed to decrease to 12 hours, the maximum time on site?
Yes, that's correct.
What I'm thinking of is perhaps a slightly different time. I'm aware of research which suggests that there may be indicia of problem gambling if people gamble for longer than 3 or 5 hours. Are you aware of that research?
I'm not too sure which research you're referring to.
Have you heard it discussed that gambling for more than 3 or 5 hours may be a sign of problem gambling?
I haven't heard that.
Okay. Are there any messages of that kind in relation to the messaging that your team puts out onto these screens that might suggest to patrons not just the maximum time that they can be at Crown, but what might be appropriate limits that they could be gaming at?
I don't believe at the moment we do.
And are you aware of whether Crown has ever considered such an approach?
Not to date, but I'd be, open to improvements.
I'm going to take you now to a different document, which is CRW.710.003.8290. And this is an email from you to Nick Emery, who I understand to be the GM Group Manager. You can see there that it's 5 November 2020, and there's a comment from you about attaching a marketing policy. Do you recall that email?
Yes.
And what was the context in which that email got sent?
Do you mind if I just recall? Yes, this was started when I arrived at Crown, looking at how we could create a marketing policy and started drafting one. And actually, there was a policy that was started on prior to my arrival by my predecessor, so I kind of picked that up as a starting point. And yes, we reviewed it. It's in a draft format. I've sent it across to my colleagues, Dan and Joe, to have a look at it and consider it. At the moment, it's still in a draft format. And where we are is looking at not only a policy for Crown Perth, but a policy that stretches across the entire group for marketing.
Okay. I'm going to call up now the document which was the attachment to this, and that's CRW.710.003.8291. And I'm not going to take you any specific detail on this page, but you can see that there are various track changes in the document.
Yes.
Who is the person who actually proposed the various changes?
Oh, that's me at the moment, track changing.
Okay.
Yes.
If we can then please go to page 6. There's an old Appendix A which has been deleted, and then subsequently there's a new appendix that's being proposed. I'm just going to show you some particular features of those appendices. If we can please zoom in on the bottom half of that page, which is the third table down, starting with all gaming material must. So from the 4th line at the bottom, you've got include all relevant regulatory messages.
Yes.
And that's obviously something which is proposed to be struck out.
No. So we're just drafting this document for changes. The anticipation is to have the checklist put in place in its new format.
Sorry, I don't mean to ask that question in a way which is confusing. There's another section of this document I'm taking you to in a moment, which appears to be the revisions to this table. So I'm not suggesting that you're striking it completely. I'm saying that it's proposed from the strikeout that it's to be replaced with a different part of the document. But I'll take you to that now so you can see what I'm talking about. If we go to page 8, you can see that here this is a replacement table, and it's not struck through, it's rather underlined.
I think that's just the track changes coming through, Mr. Lee.
Yes, I think we're in furious agreement. What I'm suggesting to you is that this table shows what is being proposed to replace the old table with.
Yes, some elements, not all, because it's still in draft and hasn't
Yes.
been reviewed, yes.
And I'm obviously taking, as you've said before, that this is still in draft, it hasn't been finalised. If we go down to the heading, which is all materials referencing gaming, and you can see the first note there is, and has to include those references to the number in the website.
Yes.
But underneath it says note not required for DMs sent to members or for on-site advertising. Now that note wasn't there in the previous table, but it is suggested for this table. Who was the person that suggested that that note should be included? Was that you, or was there someone else providing assistance?
I don't think that was me. I could have been one of my staff looking into that.
All right, but you would agree that the exemption or the exception was not something that we saw in that prior table.
So it would seem.
Just as a general question, why would Crown ever want not to put in the phone number or the website? As a good corporate citizen, wouldn't that be appropriate to just always include in advertising, including to your own customers?
I don't think we chose not to. It just was. It is what it is.
My question is, Regulation 43, from what we looked at before, requires the inclusion of that phone number and website, and I think you've said as well, if it's a broadcast advertisement, then there's this distinction drawn if it's going to customers by direct mail, not to include that. But why would Crown want...
Commissioner, we're going through this over and over again. The evidence is clear from Ms Townsend. The legal team decide that, and she follows what the legal team have told her. Now she's being asked the question, why would Crown not do that? I'm not sure that the answer to that question can assist the Commission at all.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Mr. Lee, I think the question has to be directed to what this witness would or would not do. I don't know that she can answer on behalf of Crown.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I'll rephrase that question. And what I'm directing it to is, if there is an advertisement and there's the inclusion of the logo, as we've seen is included, in your personal view, why would there be an advantage to not include the phone number and the website?
Happy to consider this, Mr. Lee, and open to improvement.
My question is not whether you are happy to consider it, but is there any reason that you can think of as to why it would not be appropriate to include?
No, we could include it, and as I said, I'm happy to consider improvements.
From a marketing perspective, would there be any concern that if the phone number or the website was present, it might discourage people from making use of the services that were being advertised?
No, that's not the intent.
And again, from your perspective as the marketing manager at Crown Perth, do you think it would be appropriate or good corporate citizenship to include that phone number and website address for all communications with Crown customers?
Yes, we could consider that.
And again, that's not my question as to whether you can consider. My question is as to whether you consider, as the Director of Marketing, that it would be appropriate or a sign of good corporate citizenship.
Agree.
If we can go back then please to page 6, and this time I'm going to show you a box which is 5th from the bottom on that page. And you can see there that there's a requirement not to advertise advantage bonuses as an inducement for customers to visit. Do you see that? 5th box from the bottom.
Yes, I see that.
Now, if we can please go back to page 8. And you can see roughly the middle of the page, there's a, well, the page is moving a little, at the bottom of the page now, at that final box, in the last dot point, don't advertise extra players and inducement to visit, and then the exception, direct mails to active members are acceptable.
That's my understanding.
So the change that's proposed by this table is to add an exception that didn't exist before in the previous table. Is that right?
It would seem that that would be the case.
And what was your thinking as to why that change should happen?
I think it was just to be clear of what allowances we are able to do in terms of what we can communicate to our customers.
Would you agree that both of those changes have the effect of making the requirements that are in this document more permissive or less restrictive on Crown?
Don't think it's about permissive or restrictive. It's just a checklist to ensure we cover things and consider things.
Well, the previous table, for example, says don't advertise with points as an inducement to visit. This table says don't do it unless they're members. So wouldn't you agree that that's giving Crown a greater capacity to use that form of advertising with respect to its members?
My understanding is that we are given provisions to do so, Mr. Lee.
And in terms then of the people who would receive those advertisements, the Crown members who would be getting those direct messages, I think previously we discussed the fact that those are the people who are most likely to be gambling more heavily and most likely to be at risk of being problem gamblers.
Not all of them, but some of them.
And so in those circumstances, do you think it's appropriate to have those sort of exceptions for mails to Crown Rewards members?
Well, this is the exceptions we have and have in place.
I understand that, but my question is to whether you consider those exceptions to be appropriate.
I don't have a comment on that, if it's appropriate
I
or
might
not.
just interrupt, Commissioner. As I understand it, and the witness can perhaps confirm this, but this policy is still in draft. There's nothing actually in place.
No, so thank you for drawing that to my attention, Mr. Garrett. So I think the question is still relevant in the sense that she can say whether would this be, in her view, an appropriate change or not,
I accept that, Commissioner.
accepting that the change may not have been made, but just proposed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. So having heard that interchange there, I'm just going to put my question again. Looking at the potential change that's flagged in the draft amendments, do you consider that that is an appropriate change?
Yes, based on the provisions that are provided to us to utilise this piece of advertising.
Okay. That can be taken down, please. I'm going to shift tack a little and ask you some questions that relate back to something we discussed earlier, which was Crown's decision to not provide advertising to self-excluded people. Now, in relation to that approach by Crown, are those the only categories of persons to whom advertising is not sent as direct mail?
In terms of, yes, that's my understanding.
If we can just call back up, please, crw.700.066.0869 and go to page 3. So here again, we've got the analysis of the success or otherwise of the individual ads. You can see that for the Riverside and Pearl streams,
Yes, sir.
the status credit ad, the 2-time status credit, appears to have the most clicks. Would you agree with that, having a look at that table?
Yes, the Riverside and Pearl, yes, we're looking at that.
And would you agree that that signals the interest of the recipients of the email in those offers?
Yes, I do.
And that there would be a good chance that some of the recipients of that email would have been induced to attend the casino in answer to those ads that they saw?
Yes, some of them do.
And of the casino's customers, the people who are in the Riverside and the Pearl streams, those members, are the ones who are the most likely to be the heaviest gamblers.
Yes.
So in that respect, before sending these emails, particularly to those heavier gamblers, does Crown do any additional analysis of the potential recipients to ascertain whether it might be appropriate to send emails to those persons?
In regards to what type of analysis?
Well, I'll give you an example. So if it was the case that a customer had been seen by the responsible gaming team in the weeks or months previously and had been recorded as exhibiting concerning behaviour, so that there had been some interaction with the RSG team, would that person still receive these emails, or does the marketing team strip out persons who have had that sort of interaction?
No, we haven't done that type of analysis.
Okay. Similarly, is that the same answer then in relation to whether, for example, the marketing team analyses spending patterns of customers to make sure that there's not dramatic spikes in spend, which might be indicative of a problem?
We don't undertake that analysis in that regard in your context.
Are you aware of whether anyone has ever made any suggestions that there be consideration given to having thresholds or criteria that would mark a person as being someone to whom advertisements should not be sent?
My understanding there is some conversations being had with the RG team and our customer analytics team, but that's I don't know much more than that.
Okay, so there's conversations in train, but you don't know the detail.
That's correct. That sort of sits outside of my role remit.
As a broad question then, going to your opinion, do you think such limitations might be appropriate?
I think wherever we can improve and assist, yes.
The final question I want to ask you is just in relation then to some historical advertisements. These are ones that were sent when Regulation 43 had not yet been amended in 2019. So if we can please call up CRW.700.067.1839. Now, this document appears as one of the documents listed in your table to your witness statement. And it's described there as a monthly direct mail reward offer brochure with a date of 17 October 2018. Did you play any part in the putting together or the approval of this advertisement?
This would come through the gaming marketing team.
And so did you ultimately approve this ad going out?
It would come through our normal approval process.
And so
Yes.
that's a yes. Thank you. So looking at the ad in the top left-hand corner, you can see there's some reference there to playing on machines in Riverside Room or Pearl Room. That's in the green ad in the top left.
Yes.
Does that suggest that this ad is likely to have been sent to all members who were eligible to be playing in the Riverside Room?
This one particular, yes, it would be open to members that could access either Pearl Room or Riverside Room.
Okay. And then looking, if we can please take that back to standard size. And then looking at the photograph on the right-hand side with the Diamond and Pearl Room now being open and the pictures of EGMs and table game in the distance, would you agree that that is clearly an invitation to persons to gamble?
That's probably, to me, that's showing our Pearl Room customers our new room. So it's more about showing the facilities and the experience.
What are the facilities of the Pearl Room?
You have a dining experience, you have a obviously hosting experience, you have entertainment, events, and obviously the gaming products.
And of those various things that you've just described, which ones are visible in that photo?
You can see the room itself, and you can see our gaming machines and our table games products in the background.
And then obviously we've got the
And
Crown.
obviously our people, of course.
Yes, and you've got your Crown logo again with that distinctive crown, the dots coming out. That's prominently displayed on that page.
Yes, that's how our monthly DMs on this case are created in a template.
And that has prompted me to ask, when you say this is our monthly template, do these go out once a month, or did they go out once a month in 2018?
They did go out once a month.
And were they generally of this sort of format?
Always this format.
Always this format, okay.
For this type of, DM offer.
Yes. Now looking at the two ads on the left there again,
So just remind me what DM stands
Oh,
for.
sorry, it's postage mail, ma'am.
Right.
Commissioner.
So looking at those two ads on the left-hand side, they essentially are ads showing that you have a chance to win something. Play on eligible machines for your chance to win as the top one.
Yes,
And on the bottom, there's reference to playing on table games to earn entries for a chance to win a car.
correct.
Now, those sorts of ads where you make use of the service to have an opportunity to win something, what are described as trade promotion lotteries. And if we go to the next page, we've got, first of all, on the bottom right-hand side, the points multiplier. We've looked at those ads in the world of entertainment. On the left-hand side, there's a promotion which talks about enjoying exclusive rewards at Crown. And there's a reference to $XX of extra play. Now, is the XX because the number or the amount of dollars to be offered to patrons varies depending on their status?
That's correct. Well, status as well as a few other variables that our customer analytics team
Help identify and select and allocate.
What sort of variables might they be?
Obviously, we look at the member in terms of the member tier, their member status. We look at also their historical visit and historical spend per visit. And then in this occasion, these are our monthly rewards. So we would allocate a reward offer based on a reinvestment rate of 15% based on the members' historical spend per visit over time, over the last probably 3 months being active. But they'd also need to qualify to receive this reward, and also this reward would require them to use it to come in and activate it, and not necessarily need to. If they don't choose to use it, it would lapse.
Yep. And when you mentioned before a reinvestment rate of 15%, is the general point, in short summary, the more you've gambled in the months before, the higher your dollar figure would have been as the offer?
It could do, but there's also a level that we would only go to.
Cap it.
And yes, a maximum of reward offer.
Okay. Then in terms of the way this would work, I think you mentioned you have to come into the casino. Is the offer here that you come in and you play on a machine, and by playing on a machine you get these extra points that are given to you for free gaming?
In terms of, you would come in and you would, I guess, transfer and activate the award would be probably the best way of saying that, yes. And then you can use that on a gaming machine on this occasion, because, again, I should probably have gone back and said one of the other qualifications is I guess the product preference of the customer is looked into as well. So do they primarily play on gaming machines or table games?
And then these ads would target people who primarily used gaming machines?
On this occasion, yes, this is for a EGM player.
Thank you. Now, looking at the specific details of this ad on the left-hand side, there are multiple rewards offered, and you can see that each of them is valid for a different period of time.
Yes, so this month, this direct mail would go out for the forward month. If I try and, I guess, give an example here, this customer, based on their historical visitation pattern, and obviously is a weekly player, is probably what I'm trying to say. So if they're generally coming in weekly, the offer model would determine to provide them with a weekly offer.
So in terms of the offer model and having regard to their play, the point of this promotion is that it's seeking to give an incentive or inducement to the customer to come to the casino at least once every week for a consecutive period of 4 weeks.
Yes, and that's based on their historical visit pattern. So that shows to us through the offer model that that's their regular visit.
And again, you are seeking to give an inducement or a reason to maintain that visiting pattern. So the campaign would be a success if patrons were then responding to it by maintaining their weekly attendance at the casino.
Yeah, I guess we probably evaluate our promotions in if they visit uniquely, if they return visit or participate or use the offer, and then obviously the average spend from that participation.
Now, you may not be aware of this, but have you heard of the 2010 report published by the Productivity Commission in relation to gambling? That report concluded that approximately 4% of Australian adults gambled on EGMs weekly, but that of that cohort, that percentage, 15% would be classified as problem gamblers and an additional 15% would be experiencing moderate risk. And for the transcript, that's pub.007.0014.1100 at page 61. So my question to you is, would you agree that what's being offered here is seeking to ensure that customers maintain a level of playing or a behaviour of playing which is associated with harmful gaming?
I would agree with you that it is about, when you said maintaining the visit, yes. For those, whether it be harmful to all, I don't have enough information to make that decision.
And appreciating that you hadn't heard of those figures before and so it has come to you new, now that I've told you that, in your opinion, is that nature of advertising appropriate to seek to maintain behaviour from customers which is associated with problem gambling?
Again, I don't have enough evidence, Mr. Lee, to suggest that our promotions are linked to problem gambling.
I'm just going to take you now to show you Regulation 43 as it existed at the time of this advertisement or this promotional material, and that's pub.0016.0024.001. And if we can please go to page 44 of that document. So in relation to this document, down the bottom there at number 2, you've got a prohibition on a person publishing or causing to publish an advertisement that conveys the existence of a gambling operator. And then if we can go into the next page, that's sub E, and that's if the advertisement offers a benefit, consideration or reward in return for the person participating in gambling. So we saw before a moment ago in that advertisement the offers of the extra play points for people to come in. My question is, were you aware of this provision in Regulation 43 as it then existed at the time that that advertisement was sent out?
I knew that the Regulation 43 existed. I think I asked what your interpretation of. Not answering you, asking, recognising your question there.
So what I'm asking, perhaps in stages, the first part would be simply at the time that that last advertisement went out, were you aware of the existence of the particular provision I'm drawing your attention to, being sub 2 sub E, and the reference there to advertisements that are offering benefits for...
Yes, I am, but I think it's the definition of advertisement that I would be questioning there.
And what would you be saying in relation to that definition?
That that piece of communication we are referring to is a direct piece of communication to a customer that has signed up to a loyalty program whereby we have provision to communicate directly to them our trade promotions and our offers, is my understanding, whereas this is looking at advertising, to the broader mass in a not, I guess, one-to-many approach.
Okay, so if I've got this correctly, and please correct me if I've got it wrong, your view is that that provision didn't apply because the marketing material going out shouldn't be characterised as an advertisement. Do I have that right?
The direct offer.
Direct offer. All right, and so in your understanding, those things are quite distinct.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Sadler.
My name is Sadler and I represent the Gaming and Wagering Commission.
I'm Sadler.
Just one preliminary question. Who oversees the Crown Perth Casino's social media pages and what's published on them?
The Crown Perth marketing team,
Is that
in my team.
Your team,
yes.
not the digital team that
No,
reports
that-
this, right?
No, the digital team looks after the website and the mobile app.
Yes. Okay. Can I bring up GWC.0002.0016.0239? And while it's coming up, this is you wouldn't have seen these unless you're watching the Royal Commission. This is a GWC agenda pack
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
for August 2018. And the particular item I want to take you to is at page 288. And this is the Victorian regulators review of the casino operator and licence. And within that document, can we please go down to page 409? To give you a bit of background to this, the Victorian regulator regularly does a review of the Melbourne casino and makes recommendations about how can it improve its performance from the
Okay,
review.
thank you.
And the particular recommendation I'd just like to take you to is recommendation 13 down the bottom there, if that can be blown up, please.
Yes.
And just so we're really clear, this is about the Melbourne casino and Victorian Crown operations, and it was in response to a concern that there's been a significant decrease in patron awareness of the responsible service. If you go to page 476 of this same document, we have Crown's response to the Victorian regulator's recommendation. And then on that document, you have at page 483, it responds to recommendation 13. If you just blow up that box, the short point is it's accepted.
Thank you. So we're looking at number 13, is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Now, if we could go to another document, this is GWC 0002.0016.0247. This is another GWC agenda paper for December 2018. And the particular agenda item is item 5.2, which is on page 13 of that document. And if you just go over the page from that one, we'll see the start of a letter from Mr. Preston to Mr. Ord. And this is the Perth Casino's response to the recommendations put forward to the Victorian regulator put forward to the Melbourne Crown Casino. I'll take you through a few parts of it to see if you've seen this before.
Sure, please.
On page 32, there's a reference to advertising. There's quite a few pages in this which talks about the responsible service of gaming features that are undertaken at Perth Casino. But here's one that's particularly relevant, I think, to your role. It's under advertising. And Mr. Preston's referencing your position here, isn't it? That's you?
That would be me,
That'd
yes,
be-
thank
oh.
you.
If we go down to then... Oh, sorry, I just asked, have you seen this letter before?
No, I haven't.
No, okay, so you haven't. Down on page 33 is a response to recommendation 13. It's in the same row at the very bottom of the page there. Hasn't completely faithfully replicated what the recommendation 13 was there, because it's dropped the point about it being carried across to social media. But you'll see there that the response in relation to Crown Perth is that a joint strategic plan applicable to Crown Perth and Crown Melbourne is being developed, and the same RSG brand, logo and messaging, once developed, we applied across both properties. Do you know if that joint strategic plan has been prepared, even as you're, in your role as GM of marketing operations or a member of the responsible gaming management committee?
I don't know about a strategic plan, but I can definitely comment on the improvements to our brand and messaging across the years
And
since
is it-
then.
Is it joint between
Crown
both
Perth-
centres?
Yes, we, in terms of the logo and the logo look and feel and how the brochures are put together, yes, we are seeing some similarities. Well,
Was that the reference to the colour change, the documents that you made at the very start?
one aspect.
And has there been any steps to publish new responsible gambling messages on Crown's social media platforms?
We certainly utilises the logo and the helpline numbers and the like. Have we done an actual campaign on social media? I can't recall.
And when you say utilise the number and the logo, is that just in response to, well, how you would put it otherwise, like gaming promotions, and you've just put it at the bottom of that, or is it a standalone basis? You've published the hotline and the logo.
With social media, that each I guess campaign is one I guess a post.
Okay.
If I could suggest that. So if it's gaming related, it will have that.
And has there been an individual post about responsible service of gaming or the new responsible gaming messages, if there are new ones?
To be honest, I can't recall. I'd have to check and come back.
Okay. Yep. No further questions. No.
Thank you, Mr Sadler. Mr Bathurst?
Nothing, Commissioner, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr Garris.
Thank you, Commissioner. Ms Townsend, my name is Garris and I act for the Crown Companies. I just have a few questions for you. Mr Lee asked some questions of you regarding the exclusion revocation process, and he took you to some sample documents regarding that process. Now, in the examples that Mr Lee took you to, there were RSG team members who interviewed the patrons as part of that process. Did you ever conduct such interviews?
No.
And was it the usual course for such interviews to be conducted by other RSG members?
I'm not sure, but I assume that would be the case.
In the instances where you've been asked to review such applications, has it been the case that there have been interviews by RSG members of the patrons?
Well, that's the way that the papers read.
Thank you. And in the papers that Mr Lee took you to, the interviewer referred to reports from counsellors. Was that, again, the usual process as far as you've been involved in that process?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And do you understand it to be a requirement that patrons obtain such reports from external counsellors in order to obtain that revocation?
That's my understanding.
Thank you. Can I take you to paragraph 23 of your statement? And while Mr Lee was asking you questions on that matter, or those matters, you explained what appeared to be limited role of your involvement in those processes. Is that what you're referring to in the last two sentences of paragraph 23? And can you just elaborate on your involvement?
Yeah, so my understanding in terms of putting the reports together or reviewing the reports is that the patron has undergone counselling, has undergone a series of steps with the counsellor, has had the the interactions with the responsible gaming advisor to determine, an outcome and a recommendation. And so that comes to within the report, and that's what I read. Is that your question, Mr. Garrett?
It is, yes.
Yes.
And so from your perspective, your role is limited to, as you put it, making sense from a layperson's perspective.
That is correct.
Thank you. Can I then just confirm you are, as paragraph 23 says, a member of the Responsible Gaming Management Committee. Now, as part of the papers that are received by you as a member of that committee, is it the case that you receive statistics in relation to responsible gambling?
Yes, they are in those papers.
Thank you. Now, during the course of some of the questions that Mr. Lee asked you, he queried what was done in substance from an RG perspective, or responsible gambling perspective, in the course of developing promotion material. Can I just ask you to turn to paragraph 46 of your statement and just ask whether that in fact does describe work done regarding responsible gambling in the course of developing marketing materials, and can you just elaborate on what you mean in
Paragraph 46 was that,
Yes.
or 47?
46, please.
Yes, so when we look at building an offer or promotion for our members, we take input around the visit behaviours and the historical visit patterns of our customer. That information is undertaken by our customer analytics team, and then that's provided to the marketing team to help us build out our offers and promotions.
Thank you. Now, last topic, it's something that arose today, but are you familiar with the recent lockdown and the fact that the Pearl Room had been opened during that time?
Yes, I am aware of that.
And are you aware if approvals were sought in relation to opening the Pearl Room?
Yes, they were.
And were they obtained?
Yes, they were. My understanding, they were obtained from both the West Australian Government and the police.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Commissioner.
Thank you. Ms Townsend, I have a few questions for you. In respect to paragraph 23 that you were just taken to, it says, around 2 years ago I was appointed to the Crown Perth Responsible Gaming Management Committee.
Yes, Commissioner.
What is the role of that committee?
That role of that committee is to, from my perspective, come together to ensure that the provision of services around responsible gaming that Crown provides are put in place and occur.
And so what is the contribution that you can make to that committee that caused you to be placed on it?
My observations is that marketing's role can assist in raising awareness of our responsible gaming programs and services, and where we can work together with the responsible gaming team to do that. That's how I see marketing can assist.
Is there a marketing management committee or anything similar?
No, I wouldn't say that's the case.
I think there's a reference at paragraph 56. It says you regularly meet with the General Manager of Responsible Gaming and the Gaming Marketing Team. So is there a Gaming Marketing Management Committee or anything of that nature?
Wouldn't call it a committee. We would have meetings with, when we, want to run through our plans with the business units, as well as inviting responsible gaming. We'd call that our trimester plan review meeting, as opposed to a committee meeting, if that makes sense.
So, and is an RSG representative at those?
They are
meetings?
invited, yes.
Do they attend?
Majority of the time, yes. Otherwise, there's, as I mentioned in my witness statement, there's an opportunity where our gaming marketing team or myself would also hold a separate session to run through that plan per se if they couldn't make it.
And does that sort of planning process, I think you've referred to some times where they've suggested different wording. Do they have a very different approach to marketing than, say, your team, who are involved primarily in attracting people to the casino, or not?
I think they have a very balanced and responsible view of looking after our customers and our patrons. Yes, that's how I would see it.
I guess you're not going to. No, I'll withdraw that. So you wouldn't see that as a very different perspective from the one that the rest of your team holds?
No, I think the way, I think I mentioned before, Commissioner, the way we look at marketing to our customers is in a responsible manner. When it comes to our offers and our offers design, we always have a principle that we don't ask our customers to do more than they've done historically in the past. And I guess the customer experience is critical for us, and in providing the right gaming experience, a safe one is important.
So then, in respect of the reports that you receive, I added it up, you get 11 daily or weekly reports, and none of them, it seems, contain responsible service of gaming information. Would you agree with that?
At this time, yes.
And who decides which reports you get?
That's a very good question. I think sometimes you just, as a new starter, you put onto distribution list based on your title and your role.
And as someone who I'm sure you regard yourself as wanting to ensure safe gaming for your patrons, why haven't you asked to receive reports in relation to responsible service of gaming?
I see those reports as part of the Responsible Gaming Management Committee. That's probably where that information comes to me.
Wouldn't you think that it was important for your team to see those reports?
I think they could, yes.
Well, that's a different question. Do you think it's important that
Yes.
the marketing team
Yes.
understand what's happening in the responsible service of gaming
Yes.
area? You were taken to the Crown marketing policy, and I just want to understand what the status of that all is at the moment. Would you regard that as sort of similar to a marketing code of conduct?
Yes.
So the old marketing policy, if I can put it like that, is that still in effect, or is that sort of in abeyance, some sort of historical document?
We don't actually have a marketing policy in existence, and so that's probably one of the reasons why we want to draft a bit more of a code of conduct that oversights everything we do. We do have processes in place and checklists to help us, and some standard operating procedures, but I think an overarching policy is what we're working towards.
So you were shown what might have been sort of the very first email that you sent in relation to it, enclosing just a marked up version of the old. Was that a marketing policy, or was it called something else?
Oh no, that's the proposed marketing policy.
Right.
I think that's
but
what you're referring to.
the original document that you started from, was that an old marketing policy, or was it called something else?
No, it was a draft that had started prior to my commencement in the person in my incumbent, which I sort of took and started to work from.
Marked up. Okay. Now, I want to know where it's got to from there, and what the proposal is in terms of actually creating an official document.
Thank you for the question. That the policy is with the Chief Marketing Officer and my counterpart in Melbourne and Sydney for their review, and it's sitting with them at the moment. I guess the intention would be to have a policy that is covers all 3 properties and the associated advertising checklists and I guess the requirements that underpin that. Where that's at is in final sort of review is my understanding, but waiting to hear back from those teams.
And I have 2 questions in respect of that. First, has to date RSG had any input into that policy?
No, we haven't gone through that review stage yet.
And the second question follows from that. What is the proposal for RSG to have input into it?
Yeah, I would like to see that policy distributed to across the property and have RSG input as well as all other aspects of our business.
What about having an external review from an RSG perspective?
I'd welcome that.
So that I understand exactly what the situation is, you talked about Crown Rewards members choosing to receive direct mailings. Do Crown Rewards members opt in to receive direct mailing, or do they opt out not to receive?
It would
sorry,
be,
that's the wrong. Do they opt out of receiving direct mailing?
They can opt out to receive direct mailing at any time.
But I think we've all been in the situation where we either have to check a box to say we want to receive direct mailing, or we check a box to say we don't want to receive check mailing. What is the situation?
It's both, Commissioner.
Right. But if you join the rewards program and you don't check a box, so of any description, maybe there's a box there, let's put that to one side, but we just don't check a box, will that person receive direct mailing or not?
No, if they've chosen not to receive either direct mail or EDM from us, then they won't receive it. We do keep their, their postal address on record because we do need to still communicate service messages to them around the actual program, but the marketing promotions part, if they've chosen not to, then as part of the Privacy Act, we do not.
In respect of the RSG messaging that appears around the casino, has there been any analysis that you know of the effectiveness of that messaging?
No, there hasn't been to date.
Or even of the recognition of it?
No, Commissioner.
If there was such an analysis to be done, would you regard that as an RSG team responsibility, a marketing team, or a combined team, or maybe even a broader?
I would think that type of analysis and research would be best conducted by, our research specialists, whether that be external or a combination of our own internal research team to get the best outcome.
Just finally picking up on the question Mr. Garros asked you about the opening of the Pearl Room during the COVID lockdown. I don't want to ask you sort of questions that you're not familiar with. So was this something that the nature of the approvals and etc., something that you knew of before the issue might have been raised in the media yesterday, or not?
No, I remember and recall it. It was if I recall back at that stage, only because we do all the communications to
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. If you
that was a stage reopening. I think the WA government, we came out of I think it was a 4-day lockdown. I could be wrong, but we came out of the lockdown and the government had announced that the casino could open, but at a maximum capacity of 150 patrons. So that meant we could, obviously not open the main gaming floor, but Pearl Room would be considered. And then my understanding is that that approvals were sought under that nature.
So then what marketing took place around that?
We would send out a...
Well, not we would, but did you?
yes,
I want to know what actually happened.
Oh, we would send a reopening message to all of our customers, indicating what areas of the property were open, inclusive of Pearl Room. I think we definitely, I'm not sure if we said Pearl Room, but we would have said that these aspects are open in the casino.
Thank you. Those were all the questions that I had. Thank you, Ms Townsend. Is there anything arising from those, Mr Lee?
Perhaps just one question in relation to a question that you were asked about how you would see material about responsible service of gaming, and the question was put in relation to the reports that you receive and whether those reports contain that information. And you responded by saying that you would see that sort of information at the Responsible Gaming Management Committee meetings. How many of those do you attend a year?
There's 3 years.
Thank you. That was my only question, Commissioner.
Right, thank you. Yes.
Please, Commissioner, I only have one question. Ms Townsend, you were asked about the marketing policy, and I've answered some questions and now clarified in response to the Commissioner's questions that the draft that there was a policy was a draft that you took over. It was never a policy, and that it's one that still is being worked on at the moment. Do you have any checklist that you follow? Though I understand there's no policy, is there a checklist that you follow? Can you tell the Commissioner about that?
Yes, as part of our campaign process of every campaign that we create and develop, there is an advertising and promotions checklist. It's quite a detailed one that has been reviewed and approved by our legal compliance teams, and it's followed by every marketing person who's in charge of seeing a campaign through to development.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't have any further
Thank you,
questions.
Mr Shaw. Ms Townsend, that concludes your evidence today. We will keep the summons in place in case there are some further questions that arise for you to answer. But certainly at the moment you're free to go about your business. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you, and we will now adjourn. We'll be reconstituting at 2 o'clock in hearing room 3. Thank you.